watching your wallet play.
Whoa. How about that? Come by the Plaza Hotel. I got work for you. As for Frank White.
On a sunny afternoon, Frank finally walked out of prison after 14 long years. He was once a feared mafia boss ruling New York's underworld, but now everything had changed. Colombian and Chinese gangs had completely taken over the drug and prostitution rackets, wiping out all of Frank's old crew. Meanwhile, Emilio, a Colombian kingpin, was leaving one of his clubs when out of nowhere, bullets ripped through the air, instantly killing him. The shooter left his body as a warning, and soon after, news broke about Frank's release. At the same time, in a fancy hotel, Jimmy was negotiating a deal with King Tito, but his big mouth got him in trouble. Tito suddenly raised the price by 10%, leaving Jimmy no choice but to hand over a suitcase full of cash for the crates. When the suitcase opened, it was stuffed with sanitary pads instead of cash. In a split second, Jimmy pulled his gun and wiped out King Tito and his men. After the massacre, Jimmy's crew proudly said they'd be seeing Frank again soon. Later, it was revealed that Jimmy's gang was also behind Emilio's murder. Frank then appeared and was greeted by their boss. Jimmy reported both Emilio and Tito were gone, and their assets now belonged to them. He also mentioned a middleman named Delicio who wanted to meet Frank. So Frank dressed up and went to a luxurious meeting full of lawyers, politicians, and a judge. There, he met Delicio and asked him to set up a meeting with Clay, a big-time drug lord, pretending he wanted to restart business. After Delicio left, Frank and his advisor Jennifer took a subway walk, while Delicio went to meet Clay at a casino. Delicio passed Frank's offer to Clay, but Clay laughed it off, saying he'd never work with Frank or his rival gang. He only dealt with Colombians and told Delicio to take his rejection back. Meanwhile, on a packed subway, Frank and Jennifer chatted casually until three thugs tried to mess with him. But when they spotted the gun under his coat, they froze.
Whoa, how about that?
Frank didn't fight back. Instead, he handed them a wad of cash and told them to drop by his hotel later. Not long after, Delicio claimed Clay had agreed to meet. Frank and his men showed up, and during the meeting, Frank announced that from now on, every deal in the city had to go through. Clay refused. So Frank didn't waste time, he drew his gun and shot him dead. Then, Frank started rebuilding his empire, calling back his old crew to join him once again. Frank met with the mayor demanding answers about the Bronx hospital funds. The mayor coldly replied that no budget was ever approved and told Frank to raise $16 million himself if he really cared. Shocking. Everyone. Frank accepted, despite his lawyer's protests. Later, while having a quiet drink, three detectives, Tommy, Roy, and Dennis, showed up and dragged him out, ignoring his lawyer. They drove against traffic to lose any tails and stopped in a dark alley, where a beaten man named Enrico lay unconscious. The cops accused Frank of being involved, but he denied it. Without proof, they had to let him go. Enrico turned out to be a Colombian drug boss, and his attack made the cops suspect Frank was behind all the recent gang killings. Soon after, Delicio met Wong, a Chinese triad boss, in a theater to deliver Frank's message. Wong demanded full cash for a 220-pound shipment, knowing Frank couldn't pay. Delicio then proposed a meeting between them to work something out. The next day, Jimmy stopped by a diner and kindly gave money to an old lady and her grandkids. But out of nowhere, detectives and cops swarmed the place. It was a setup. With no way out, Jimmy was arrested and charged with the murders of several Colombians, based on Enrico's testimony. Meanwhile, Frank visited a struggling Bronx hospital and discussed the deal with Wong again. He proposed selling the shipment together to split profits and fund the hospital, but Wong refused, still demanding full payment. When Frank got back to the hotel, he learned Jimmy had been caught. Determined to save him, Frank ordered his crew to act that night. Jennifer led the mission and successfully broke Jimmy out. When the detectives arrived, they were fuming. Jennifer warned them that if they pushed further, the case would go to court. Soon after, in Chinatown, Frank and his crew found the Chinese gang's base. They launched a ruthless assault, wiping everyone out. Frank captured Wong, forced him to hand over all his assets, and even then, he didn't let him live. A few days later, thanks to Frank's massive donation, the Bronx hospital finally opened to the public. The news drove Detective Dennis crazy. He believed Frank had become the real king of New York, while they were stuck doing useless police work. Dennis felt the system favored Frank too rich, too smart, always slipping through the cracks, so he came up with a wild plan. Have a team of detectives hit Frank and make it look like a gang war. Roy disagreed, but Dennis didn't care. That night, Frank's crew partied hard at a nightclub while Frank took a call. Soon, Delisio showed up with a drug lord from LA who wanted to buy the 200-pound shipment from Wong. He offered half up front, half later. Frank refused. He wanted full payment now. The man asked to check the goods first, but as soon as he stepped out, he pulled a gun and shot one of Frank's guards dead. Delisio had betrayed them. Within seconds, a shootout erupted amid the chaos. Frank helped Jimmy escape, but one attacker grabbed onto their car door. When Jimmy struck back, he realized the man wasn't just a thug, he was a cold-blooded cop. Frank instantly grabbed a fire extinguisher and smashed the attacker with brutal force. The rest panicked and ran, reporting back to Chase. That's when it was revealed the attackers were actually detectives Tommy, Dennis. A wild car chase erupted with bullets flying everywhere. After a long pursuit, Frank and Jimmy barely escaped. Tommy and Dennis searched the area until Frank suddenly rammed their car head-on, causing a brutal crash. Jimmy jumped out, fired a few rounds, and made a run for it. Tommy chased him on foot while Dennis checked the wreck but found no sign of Frank. Under a bridge, a gunshot echoed Tommy was hit. Jimmy didn't hesitate. He fired again and again, leaving Tommy dying on the ground. But then Dennis appeared, emptied his gun at Jimmy, and killed him on the spot. He rushed to Tommy's side, but it was too late. His partner was gone. Crushed by guilt and grief, Dennis broke down completely. Unable to stand the tension at the funeral, Dennis quietly slipped out and got into his car. But before he could even start the engine, a car pulled up beside him. The window rolled down. It was Frank. Without a word, Frank pulled the trigger, killing Dennis instantly. He then calmly drove off and returned to his base, where his men had already captured Delisio. During the interrogation, Delisio confessed that Enrico had been working with the cops to bring Frank down. He'd taken $50 million and sold out Frank's location in exchange for freedom. Enraged, Frank ordered his crew to bury Delisio alive with the dirty money still on. That night, when Delisio came home, he found Frank waiting. Frank coldly admitted to killing Clay, Wong, and King Tito, all criminals hiding behind power and money. He claimed he was just cleaning up the filth the system ignored. Before leaving, Frank warned that anyone who interfered would end up dead. Later, he told Roy to handcuff him as part of a setup, but the moment Frank left, Roy freed himself and raced to catch him at the subway. Inside the subway car, Frank grabbed a passenger to use as a shield. Roy begged him to surrender, but Frank refused and coldly shot him dead. He then walked out of the station like nothing happened and got into a taxi. Only then did he realize he'd been hit by Roy's bullet and was bleeding badly. Police soon flooded the area after reports of the shooting. The terrified cab driver noticed Frank's gun, jumped out, and called for help. With sirens blaring and cops closing in, Frank's strength faded. With one last breath, the once feared King of New York died quietly in the back seat, ending his bloody reign where it began, in the streets he once ruled. And that's how the once powerful King of New York met his end, not by his enemies, but by his own greed and pride. No matter how high you rise, if your heart's full of corruption, you'll fall just as high. If you enjoyed this story, hit like and subscribe. More crazy true crime stories are coming your way.